Hey guys, what's up? It's Blue, and I'm really excited because now I have Gozaburo's deck to show you guys. Real quickly before we go through it, I want to talk about it briefly because he's one of the characters we got a lot of requests for a while back. Especially last October when we had that virtual world wave, and both him and the Big Five United were missing. A lot of you guys asked, where was he? Can we build him? And one of the problems was that along with the Big Five United was we had a little bit of trouble trying to complete their decks because for various reasons, as I said, the Big Five had their had a mechanism that was kind of missing that we fixed with an errata. Gozaburo had very few cards played, and only characters who play a lot of cards would only make a few, or we can pick up on their theme. Like, again, I keep referencing Gansley as a good example because they print only a few of his cards, not many of his main monsters, but he has a very clear and obvious theme that we're definitely able to extract from and build him a full deck. And also kind of like Anubis, what we just did. He didn't play many cards, but Delta and I worked hard to find a way to give him a 40-card deck kind of based on what we saw. And Gozaburo was the same way. But we toyed with it, we tried some new ideas, and overall we're actually really happy with the way the deck turned out. So it's going to be comprised of cards he used in his duel, cards that he used in the virtual world itself, in the environment outside of the duels, and some stuff that we threw in to kind of make his deck a little bit more cohesive, as well as, just also help give him that number 40. So I'm going to go through it and, call him as I see him. So first up, I'm going to just cover Exodia, the 5 pieces. So he has 2 full sets of Exodia. One set, even though that's kind of how we can assume his deck was, because everyone had like one set except for Seeker. One set makes it a little bit harder. So that's one of the problems, is having 2 sets gives them more consistency in the Exodia pieces. It gives us extra 5 cards towards the total deck count, which is usually the hardest problem. Also, having 2 sets helps ensure you have some backup for Necross, which we'll talk to when we get to Necross. But so that's it, just 2 of each set. Because again, 3 is a bit much because we don't want it to copy like Seeker's deck, which has 3 sets. We don't want this to feel like an Exodia deck that you want to kind of hoard the pieces and draw and win. This is a deck where you want to feel like you're playing to summon Necross or to summon something else and win that way, again, instead of just kind of hoarding pieces. So that's the 5 Exodia pieces. Next is Cosmo Queen. So in his duel, he used Exodia and Exodia Necross, but in the realm of the virtual world, where monsters come to life and magical things can happen, although not really. It's usually terrifying things because monsters come to life. Gozaburo summoned a variety of monsters that were meant to mimic chess pieces because, again, if you've watched the original anime, you understand the correlation between Seto Kaiba and Gozaburo Kaiba and chess. There was a connection there. So naturally, even though it wasn't his actual deck type in the end, Gozaburo did take advantage of chess pieces and using monsters. Interestingly enough, he did not use the Archfiend archetype, which is directly based off chess pieces. But I mean, personally, I don't mind. I think the way he has it is kind of cool because it uses a mix of monsters. So Cosmo Queen, and there's one of it because he summoned each of the monsters in the appropriate quantity of chess. And if you've never played chess, it's 1 king, 1 queen, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, 8 pawns. He never played a king piece, maybe because he treated himself as the king, or it just never came up. Anyway, so we want to make sure we can keep the pieces at an appropriate quantity if possible, and we did manage to get that. So only 1 copy of Cosmo Queen. That, and it's pretty, ball and monster, so if you don't have Necross out, you do have Cosmo Queen as a backup. Next, Lizard Soldier. 3 of them, because even though this is meant to replace the pawn, there's still a 3 limit in deck building. But we have it at max true to the pawn piece. The Rook, Rock Ogre Grotto Numero Uno. Really something we saw in Joey's Little Kingdom deck, so there's a little correlation, I guess, between two decks that have the same monster for different reasons, but, other than that, nothing special. Alright. To Editor. I don't remember now if Skull Knight was meant to be the Bishop or the Knight, because there's two monsters that have Knight. So I'm going to introduce it as both, and then we will cut whatever one's appropriate. So, next up is the Bishop, Skull Knight. So, yeah, we're back to this thing with Flame Swordsman, Giltia, Bakura Box. So, we have it as a fusion, and in the anime, it was, so again, this all happened in the virtual world, where monsters could just be conjured digitally, outside of duels, regardless of any kind of summoning condition, usually. So, without it being played in a duel, it's kind of up in the air if it was actually a fusion and they just summoned it because they can, or if it was a normal monster. Regardless, we chose to errata it to a normal monster with the exact same stats, so that this deck could have that one missing monster piece. And we definitely didn't want to make it into an actual fusion, because having those things in there will really kind of slow the deck down. Even though it would give him more cards, it gives him cards that, ultimately would make the fusion that he used. It's the same reason why we just don't put the fusion for Flame Swordsman in the deck, is it kind of slows the deck down a bit. And being that we changed a lot of things to make the decks play anime-like, we'd rather just go to that point where we can just summon it, and there it is. So you can find this in our RAD document. The same thing as Flame Swordsman and a lot of other monsters. It's just treated as a normal monster, so you get a tribute for it. It's going to have the same attack stats. You ignore the fusion pieces. And with all those, so last up, his last piece is Command Knight. He actually used Command Knight, whereas we have it as a filler in Tristan's deck. So, again, that's not relevant to anything other than it's kind of, sometimes we like to see where the same cards are in different decks throughout all our decks. Like, so-and-so has this because we gave it to them, so-and-so has it because they played it for whatever reason. So, Command Knight, which leaves one monster left, Exodia Necross. His, his trump, his main thing that, I know the trump is the main thing, but, he didn't have anything else, really. Unlike characters where we see some bosses come to play and then a trump, he just went straight for Necross, and he held on to Necross until the very end of the duel. I want to talk about it quickly because there's a difference in the effect of the TCG card and the anime card. Being that the TCG card, they both need contract with Exodia, which requires to have the pieces in the graveyard. The TCG card needs to have all 5 in the graveyard. If anyone's removed, he is destroyed. And he has all of his effects regardless of that. Regardless of which pieces are there, as long as all 5 are there. So, the anime version, though, he got different effects based on each piece. So, the anime version had to have all 5 in the graveyard to summon Necross via contract, but if he lost one of the pieces, it just loses one of its multiple effects. As in immunity to spell cards, immunity to trap cards, the attack increased effect, not destroyed by battle, or in the anime it was also unaffected by monster effects. But basically each piece corresponded to some part of its effect. And that was the difference. In the anime, Kaiba removed each of the pieces to strip it of its effects. In the TCG, you just have to remove enough pieces to not have all 5. Which, again, is why we thought it was good to have 2 copies. Because having 1 copy means your opponent can just monster born out any one piece, Necross is gone. So, 2 is balanced. You'd have to have 2 separate cards that remove 1 monster, like 2 monster borns, or Soul Demolition. That's where it's really what that card was in the deck for originally for. So, that's again, it's not an errata we thought we had to make. So we're leaving it with the TCG printed effect. Obviously, there's no white sticker there. But we wanted to note the differences in the effect so that, when you see us play with this card, or if you guys play with the card, you can kind of have an understanding of, you know, the different ways it works, again, between the actual TCG cards and the anime. Alright, so next up is spell cards. 3 copies, contract with Exodia. Obviously, you will not be able to use all 3 copies necessarily, but it's for consistency, and it's the way we've done a lot of stuff. Like, again, the Big 5 deck we just did, there was 2 Deal with Dark Rulers to 1 Berserk Dragon, so we like to have, not always, but oftentimes, 1 extra of a, you know, of a spell or trap card for a summon than the monster it summons. A little bit of as a balancing thing, so you get consistency in, you know, drawing the summoning card, but you don't have too many copies of those powerful monsters to just draw and summon as easily. So again, it's a bit of, it's our technique, it's our style, as far as balancing. Also, fun fact, randomly, this copy is the only one of the ones we have that they did not censor out the Ankh in the picture. Absolutely irrelevant to the deck, but it's kind of fun if you want to see, again, the way they change cards from, you know, the original Japanese to the easily censored American versions, or TCG versions. So, 2 Foolish Burial. Again, he played Painful Choice, and Foolish Burial works in the same sense of putting the monster from your deck into the graveyard. It just works a little bit slower. We have 2 of these to balance out, as you'll see soon, 2 Painful Choices, because 3 Painful Choices is a lot of monster or card removal. So we figured 2 and 2 to help balance it, and again, it works for that same engine, that same goal of his, is to put Exodia pieces in the graveyard quickly. Monsterborn as a fill to a lot of our decks because it's a very versatile card. It gives him a monster back so he could, you know, bring back something he needed, like Cosmo Queen perhaps, or Skull Knight if he needed to bring something stronger onto the field in place of a missing Exodia Necross. So that's why it's there. It's a lot of our decks just because. Right. Painful Choice, again, 2, because we felt that it was a kind of balanced number. It helps to get the pieces in the graveyard quickly. It's not that he has 3 and then mills out his entire deck. So 2 is where we thought it was really balanced. Again, comboing with those 2 Foolish Burial gives him a nice mix of ways to send cards from the deck to the graveyard. Pot of Greed, one of our throw-ins, helps give the deck a little bit of some speed. It's never a bad card for a filler because it's very neutral. And this, as you'll come to see later on, pretty much from this point, the rest of the cards are all cards he did not actually use. He's only played 8 cards, and ending with Painful Choice, that was all 8 of them. So, Pot of Greed, give him a little bit of draw power, never hurts any deck. Next up is 2 Remove Trap. So, this is a really interesting card we don't tend to fill decks with. It's only a few characters' decks who actually played it. I'm not going to say why it's here yet, because actually the very last card in this video is why this is here. So just keep in mind 2 Remove Traps. The last spell card is 2 Swords. So again, not a card he played, and we weren't trying to borrow it from Seeker, but Swords works because it's a neutral defensive card. His next card, his trap card, is also kind of along those lines, right? It's one of the cards we like to use for filling in characters' decks is, you know, neutral cards. So it stalls the opponent from attacking, but it doesn't hurt the opponent. It's not Mirror Force. It's not Magic Cylinder. It's not something. It's not something that will set your opponent back in either monsters or life points or something like that. It's there to help you buy some time, because it's a tricky deck because its main strategy is dropping Exodia Necross. So it does have other monsters, but they're mostly kind of weak, and you use them to summon really strong normal monsters, so it lacks too much of a strategy. So 2 Swords helps to hold off until you can build up that Exodia strategy. Again, we can't all have it like the anime where we open up with the stuff to use Necross. So 2 Swords as a way to buy turns. So trap card, again, like I said, the first trap card is one of those. So, okay, Negate Attack. Again, neutral defensive card. It buys you a turn. It's a one-off. And because Swords is a continuous spell card, well, not actually continuous, but it lingers in the field, and negate attacks a trap card, they can also be removed from the field. It's not like they're, you know, untouchable. You can easily get rid of them with certain decks, so they buy you time, but not at a heavy cost to your opponent, where they're completely irremovable. And the last card, one of my favorite cards in this deck, because it really helps get everything going, is Obliterate. So a new-ish card that we got not too long ago. Obviously, clearly designed to work with Exodia. So I'm going to quickly go through what it does and why it's here. Is because the way it works is you target a monster on the field, you send a Forbidden One or Exodia card from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and you take that monster or return to the controller's hand. So it could be yours, could be theirs. The main key is you send an Exodia card from your deck or hand to the graveyard. So you can send the pieces, the head, or even Necross or Contract if you really had to get, you know, a monster removal in there. You can only activate the effect once per turn and only one card per turn. So even if you had both of them on the field, you could only use one's effect once per turn. Kind of fair, balances it out. But if you keep this up turn after turn after turn, you can easily put pieces in the graveyard fast with Obliterate. Its second effect is that when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can return an Exodia card or a Forbidden One card from your graveyard to your hand, which is why we have Remove Trap. Remove Trap will take care of Obliterate. It gives you that gaining effect. And the reason we use Remove Trap instead of MST, because MST is all around better, but giving him two just completely, you know, ambiguous spell trap removal cards is kind of what we try to avoid, again, in balancing the duels. So Remove Trap will definitely work on Obliterate. It could work on an opponent if they have a face-up continuous trap card, but it's not like, you know, he's just dropping MSTs and destroying the opponent's spell and trap cards, right? That's why we don't give him Heavy Storm. So Remove Trap works to get the Obliterate second effect while balancing the deck against opponents. So, and because of this, because this has Exodia cards, you could take back a destroyed Necross and potentially use all three contracts to summon 3 Necrosses, one being twice, or perhaps somehow one of it 3 times, but you get the idea. So it is technically possible to use all 3 contracts. You can also just use them as extra bait for Obliterate. So it's, again, a great way to get the pieces in the graveyard fast, and you could use it as a quick and dirty way to actually kind of, quote, search Necross or Contract by sending them to the graveyard and then taking them back right away. So that is our version of Gozaburo's deck. It took us a while to figure out a way to get it to the way we liked it. So it seemed like it could be Gozaburo's deck while still playing well, and we're actually really happy with where it is. So this is it. We have now built every character's deck from the virtual world, including the Big 5 United deck, so that's those 5 characters kind of almost twice. And overall, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We're happy to have that story arc definitely wrapped up. And if you watch through the playlist we had from last year with all the virtual world stuff, plus the stuff we had now, that entire story arc should be there in the form of all the various duels and all the deck profiles from every character. So, thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more exciting content coming soon. Later.